Hey, we're Attention Trading, a full-service digital marketing agency that helps small and mid-sized businesses with their strategic marketing efforts. From websites, design, social media, and ads, our goal is to create marketing alignment for our clients. You may not realize it, but the majority of businesses lack a solid marketing strategy and plan. That's where we come in. On this show, we talk with business owners, founders, and marketers to uncover the secrets of their success when it comes to starting and scaling a business. This is the Attention Trading Podcast. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Attention Trading Podcast, where we talk with CEOs, owners, founders, and marketers about how they grow, scale, and operate their business. My name is Max Lowy. I'm here with my co-founder of Attention Trading, Steve Alves. Today, we have a very special guest. He is a brother from another mother. He is actually my brother-in-law, and he has just jumped into the startup world, building his very own product and brand called PACT. Today, we will talk with Mark Friedman about how he came up with the idea of PACT and what the future holds for his new startup. Mark, welcome to the Attention Trading Podcast.
Thank you. Good to see you outside of a family barbecue. Good to see you in a professional format. Excited for it.
That's why we're here. We're here. Today is not about me. Today is about you, my friend. Today is, I know what you're up to. And I know you personally, and Steve knows you. We want to make sure our listeners understand who Mark is and really get a nice introduction of what you're building, because I think it's something that's super unique and it has the ability to change the landscape of a space. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you kind of take the lead here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and then obviously as we kind of like where we're at now with what you're building.
I come from a product background, which I definitely didn't know much about 10 years ago, but then I was doing product for the last 8 years at American Express and kind of watched product go from like an extension of marketing to other people within the organization not really knowing what it is, to being like a mature discipline with a title that people kind of get, all the way up to if I say I'm a product person at a happy hour, the other person might know what that is and might have like a grip of what I do day to day. So I was doing a lot of product work, and really all that kind of skill set translates pretty nicely to kind of building your own digital thing, whatever that might be. So I kind of cut the cord and made the jump to go from one of the biggest Fortune 100 banks to a company of one now with my own little product. And we've been doing it for really like 12 months. The idea has been formed for at least 12, 15 months, but have been doing it full time for the last 3 months. So it's an interesting point into business. I don't know when something is allowed to be called a business, but I definitely have both a product, lawyers, I'm selling it. I got a tax ID, I got goals, I got everything that I could want to call it a business. And now we just need to kind of grow it up.
Love that. Well, so you've been working on this for on and off for a year, like you just said. What I'd like to know is, I guess, what inspired you to actually do this though? Was there something, a moment, something that you saw a lack in the market, some kind of opportunity? Like, was there a spark that just was like, hey, I want to do this because of X, Y, and Z?
I think that I've always wanted to, A, start my own company, and B, I've always tried to think of ideas and think of things that could be exciting or have a marketplace for itself. As we started, or as I started to think about PACT, a lot of nice narratives emerged that kind of like when you're a founder, you need momentum in your brain to say like, keep going, like keep doing this. So really the idea came together from watching my mother-in-law, your mother, need a product. She owns a mortgage. She has a mortgage. She extended a mortgage to somebody, but she didn't really have any payment tools or any software that could help manage that mortgage for her, and was doing things with pen and paper, printed out documents, a check in the mail to make payments, all these kinds of things, which I thought could be really easily digitized. Taking that and understanding like where the real estate market is and getting a little bit further and further, month by month, like week by week, into more research about this process of mortgage servicing and really like peer-to-peer mortgages, started to kind of emerge that there's some tailwinds, there's some good narratives. Every single week I find something out a little bit more. And that's like really from zero, sitting around at a table and talking to my mother-in-law, up to like Googling what do other people that do this do, to finding out that there's a gap, and then to deciding like, wait a second, I want to go build some software to squeeze this gap. That really takes like 2 months when there's family, Christmas, holidays, day job, all that stuff in
Kids.
between. Kids, you gotta like do things like week by week. So when you get an idea, as long as like every single week you find one thing that's motivating and gets you to the next week, all of a sudden you wake up 3 months later and you're like, I'm ready to build something. I haven't figured out something that has shifted me off this course. And so my first 3 months were kind of just that research phase and seeing that there's a space here that I can fill.
Let's dive a little deeper into the actual application of what this thing does versus what the traditional mortgage is like. Like you said, you kind of pointed and alluded to, was it's peer to peer. So what does that require? What's the environment that someone's in, like Gail was in, that ultimately sparked this? Like, what's the situation, and why is this different from a traditional mortgage perspective?
As complicated as it sounds, it's very linear. And if you think of like a traditional home buying experience, I go to Steve and then say, I want to buy your house. I don't have all the money. So Max, the bank, steps in and says, I will give Steve all the money, and then Mark, you will pay me, Max. In this instance, if Steve owns his house outright, he has no debt on the property, then he can extend to me the mortgage and I can make payments from Mark to Steve once a month, because in reality, there doesn't actually need to be a bulk sum of money that moves. Steve can basically create a loan, extend it to me. I own the house. I have keys to the house. I live in the house. The loan is secured by the house. If I don't pay, then Steve takes the house back. Just like if I don't pay the bank, then Max takes the house back. So it actually just kind of removes one pillar of the triangle of a normal home buying experience. And the home buying experience just happens between two people. It's still a mortgage and it's still a loan, but I make payments directly to the seller of that house. And this does happen hundreds of thousands of times across the country. People do this. I didn't really know that maybe like as many people do it as they do. And a lot of my kind of like hypotheses about why this could fit a gap have to do with the real estate environment, the rate environment, and kind of like a lot of demographic tailwinds that I think exist. And those are the things that I was
Now,
chipping at like week by week.
The benefit here is that because it's a peer-to-peer. Oh, I lost it for a second. Sorry, rephrase that, Mark. We were saying that at the end there.
All I was saying is I was getting like nuggets of these things chipped away at every week. Like, oh man, like rates are crazy high right now. Like maybe somebody wants to do this, or like banks are tightening up. Maybe like more people want to do this, or like, you know, millions of people across the country own their home outright and maybe want to sell this and carry a mortgage and collect the interest. So like maybe more people want to do this. And like every single week I'd find like a nugget where it seems like this becomes more of an attractive product, and I just need to build some software to do it. But that's what I'm good at. I can build software.
It definitely seems that way. Just given that the fact that the current interest rates, bobbing between 6 and 7%, if it's a peer-to-peer mortgage, then all of a sudden, like that gets kind of thrown out the window, right? Because like, you can make the percentage essentially whatever the market you think will bear, right? Is that true, or does it have to adhere to some sort of like mortgage norm?
There's no real rules. You can design your mortgage the way you want it designed. One of my, hypothesis is that if people are seeing that their home is sitting on the market because rates are 7, if you're able to say, well, hey, I'm willing to give you a 5% rate, I'm going to save you a lot of time, money. We don't need to involve a bank to get this done. And all of a sudden your house becomes differentiated on the market, you can sell faster. To say nothing of the fact that you are then collecting 5% of interest on your money, and you're not a landlord. If the sink breaks, no one's calling you. You're not paying property taxes. You effectively get a fixed income stream. You capture the interest on that income stream. It's fun to be the bank. There's a reason why banks do these things called mortgages. And you have a big asset. At that point, you've generated like a really big asset for yourself. But there's not that many tools to help you service that asset. You might need to get a check in the mail and then write down on your legal pad that your borrower paid you. That's no good, but software can do that in 1 second.
Yeah. So dig into the software a bit then. So there's the software itself. That the purpose of it is to both be a repository for transactions, right? Yep. To actually have a list of all the transactions in real time. It gives equal access to both the purchaser and the seller, right? Yep. To see all those transactions. Does it also commit the transactions? Can you pay by credit card in the system? Or is it by check or ACH?
Short answer is basically all of that. And this is where kind of like my American Express background kicked in. So I used to work on our mobile app, and our mobile app is, for the most part, like a servicing function of American Express. It shows you your transactions and it helps you make payments. It keeps all of your personal details, all that kind of stuff. PACT, the company that I'm building, does transactions. We do ACH payments. We want to expand to other payment functions in the future. We definitely have both secure logins for the borrower and the person that extended the mortgage. We do very normal things like have name, email, password, profiles, these types of things. And there's a lot of other digital tools that can help you kind of keep your mortgage on the up and up. We run on Stripe, which I think, we can talk all about the merits or not merits of Stripe, but so far so good with them. To give you guys a little background onto why Stripe, I think it's worth talking about. Like, as much as I worked for American Express, am I a payments person? Hardly. I used to work on zero parts of the payments function of Amex. Did I know about Stripe? Yeah, I knew about it. I didn't know if it could do peer-to-peer. I really wanted something that was peer-to-peer. I started doing some homework on Stripe, and I started to find that they had certification programs for development agencies that are Stripe experts, or they've done a handful of products on Stripe. And that is actually how I started finding dev agencies to get quotes to build my site. And then how I eventually picked one of my agency partners. I felt really good that Stripe was not going to evaporate because they're super well funded. They make a ton of cash. I felt good that they certify these dev agencies and put their brand next to them, such that the dev agency wasn't going to evaporate and disappear and leave me in the dust. Anecdotally, I've heard that Stripe is considerably more expensive than many other payment solutions. So we will see how much the relationship grows with them. But I do think that they offer so many startup focused solutions right out of the box. And the expense might be relative to other payment providers, but the expense relative to other mortgage servicers like myself seems to be pretty fair, if not like much cheaper. It seems like I can offer my customers competitive pricing even if I'm using Stripe.
Right.
That's how I got to Stripe.
Not a sponsor of this podcast.
Not a sponsor yet.
Yeah.
Not a sponsor yet of this podcast. They have done good things for me, and I do think it's worthwhile as a founder to go with a brand sometimes that are not going to disappear. Like I literally never have any worries that my payment provider, which is a pretty core engine of my company, is not going to change. And I know that if I continue to grow and do more volume, I can push my price down over time. So I felt good about that choice. It was one of the company's bigger first choices, is like, hey, you don't know anything about payments and you're trying to build a payment service. What do? You have to kind of do some homework and then make a choice. But
I mean, of all the processors that are out there, I mean, Stripe is a solid one. Authorize.net, Braintree, there's a ton of them. Stripe, we personally use Stripe for some of those transactional things, and it's works for well. It is more expensive, but I think the more volume you start processing with them, that will kind of even out at some point as well, because it will get a little bit cheaper with some volume. But I mean, your approach is interesting, because generally we don't hear a lot of people say, let me go to the tool and find the developer, right? Yeah. That's a very different approach, but like the ideology behind finding a trustworthy service that you can rely on, that is not going to evaporate into nothing soon, and then backfilling that with finding a developer to do that kind of work is smart. I mean, you will kind of allow your vetting and let them do it.
Yeah, it's pretty intentional, and I think that's for me at least, that's like a very key point. Like something so not minuscule, something that's extremely important for your business, but something that you could just pick and choose because there are options, but it was very strategic in how you chose, a developer based off the tool. I think it's important to note that, because I think that's just how you're going to continue to build this out, and you're going to build it out with intent, not only for the buyers, but also the sellers, and making sure that you're building the best kind of product possible. So I don't know, I think it's a really good and interesting point, because it was very intentional.
It's shown up a couple times with other things. Like right now, I really want to push out a marketing campaign. I want it to be an email campaign. I have almost no experience with email campaigns. My wife is very big on Klaviyo, loves Klaviyo. And I...
Not a sponsor.
Yes. Not a sponsor yet.
All these name drops.
But so we went to our development partners and we kind of were like, listen, we want to use Klaviyo for this campaign, and they have pushed us to using SendGrid, and they feel like Klaviyo is less of... They feel like it perhaps doesn't mirror some of the funnel that we want to action off of with our site. So Klaviyo will be hosting our lead list and hosting the campaign, but most of the trigger actions and the distribution is coming from SendGrid. So, I guess like it's shown up to be a little bit of a pattern for me, where I find like a platform that either gets recommended, or I've heard about from the industry, or whatever it might be, and then I like marry myself to that platform a little bit. but it's not always how it is going to come to life. So I don't know. You can choose to
If
go
it's
platform
if
or
it's any sort of validation for you, all the words you're using are things that we'd also recommend, right?
yeah,
Klaviyo is great. I've used SendGrid for years, but
yeah,
not necessarily that in that capacity itself. Stripe, like all those kind of like terms and phrases you're using are like they're perfect. Like they're well established companies that do really great work. Again, if they wanted to sponsor,
I kind of feel that way about Stripe. Sometimes when we're nerding out at happy hour, and I'm like, yeah, my business runs on Stripe. The other guy goes, whoa, dude, whoa, money bags, and I'm like, well, how is Stripe a $95 billion company? Like, like, come on, like somebody is using this company, and they build really good products. Like, how do you think they grew into, being as big as they are?
And I think there's also, when you use some of these bigger brand names, it also legitimizes you and your brand, right? You are using quality brands that have been tried and tested, and it's a good thing. And I think you're going to evolve, right? As the business grows and as you might find or need different kinds of solutions, that might change. You might not always want to use Klaviyo. You might want to use something else. So I think to Steve's point, everything you're saying, or at least the brands that you're saying that you're currently using, it's brands that we would recommend on a normal basis to most of our clients. I want to take a one step back here and get into something that I think is, at least what we do on a more regular basis. That's the creative side. The name PACT. Where did it come from? Who came up with it? The logo, design, all that good stuff. Like, where did that all stem from?
PACT came from one really solid week of, I think it was Super Bowl Sunday weekend. We went to a friend's house for the weekend. We had 1 week of brainstorming to get to PACT. There were many, many bad names that got thrown out to the wayside. The first name was OneNote, because this mortgage is called a promissory note. That's like the legal term. You create this mortgage peer to peer. It's called a promissory note. So I was like, okay, this is for somebody who has one mortgage. Let's call it OneNote. It took 5 minutes to figure out that Microsoft has OneNote as a product, and that was just not gonna happen for us. So then we maybe got like hung up a little bit on the note thing, and eventually worked our way to PACT. I'm pretty sure I came up with the name PACT of the friend group, but it does, in my mind, convey that you're making an agreement with somebody. You're going to pay them once a month on the first of the month. It's a massive commitment. And that other person is also trusting you. When you go to a bank and you say, here's my credit score and a W-2, and I'm so excited to get this house, and please, please, please give me this loan. Like, it's very impersonal, but they're making an agreement with you. In this function, two parties are making a pact and exchanging a house, which is wildly important to people. It's your shelter. It's where you grow up and live and spend most of your time. So PACT emerged. Naturally, could not get PACT.com. Naturally started to work through all the domain names and combinations to get to where we're at today, getpact.us. And then from a logo development standpoint, I think we will continue to work on it. And from a creative standpoint, we'll continue to work on it. There's lots of good logos for really like handshakes, like you're making a pact. Like, we don't really have that logo today, and I don't feel bad about it, but I would like a bigger, better logo that kind of conveys a little bit more of like, this is two parties coming to an agreement and making a pact. But we'll get there.
Cool.
I mean, just off being a creative, just off looking at the word PACT, you literally have two letters in the middle of that would work really well on doing some sort of interchangeable, like something that would intertwine those two. There's definitely something there with someone who's more of an illustrator who can see that vision, but I can see the phrasing itself, because some words don't lend to that. Some words are not very balanced. The phrasing, you literally have this shape with PACT, right? You have the lowercase p to the lowercase t. So like, it's again, well balanced. It's just, it might be just by happenstance from a creative perspective, but you could do something really cool that would both have that same sort of professionalism using a serif font like you've already have, but also the fact that it's a short word and easy to say, like an Uber, right? So like, you picked a name that fits really well. You just need a logo that just really translates that right for you.
And where do you guys land on like logo art versus manipulating the font versus using maybe just like a singular letter? We had some options that had more of like a document, almost like Microsoft Word, because you are effectively signing a note, like you're signing a commitment. We scrapped that because I thought that it looked like Microsoft Word. So I think, maybe when you kick off any type of branding or logo exercise, you're like, how image heavy? Do I make a symbol that goes next to my name? Do I just manipulate this font? Right now I'm leaning towards maybe something like you're suggesting, Steve, where a little bit more of the word itself gets manipulated into what is still readable, but a logo that conveys what we want it to.
This is, and I'm going to take over this conversation from Max. The way that I see these things is I think there's no right and there's no wrong answer. The way I like to treat these things, and this is kind of evident in our attention trading logo as well, is that every piece you have should be able to stand on its own and convey a similar message. So like, we'll take ours, for example. We have an abbreviation of attention trading that's balanced, 4 letters and 4 letters. We have the triangle that it's a combination of an A and a T, which you might not be able to see that right off the bat until you really look at it and you can actually see the combination of the two things. I think from any brand perspective, you should be able to have every element of your logo be able to, again, stand on its own and convey your message, but they should be able to also work together. Primarily, I don't like a lot of stuff going on in a logo. I think a logo itself should be able just to see it and go, boom, I know exactly what that thing is. I think if your word or the phrasing you're using for the company is super vague, then you might need a supplementary icon to be able to display that. But the fact that it's called PACT, I think stands really well on its own. And if you can do some visualization within that, that's not overly obvious. Like, here's a good example, FedEx, right? And I think this is a pretty common one that people see. Like, you don't see it until you see it thing. Like, there's an arrow in the FedEx logo, right? Pointing forward, right? That's some negative space usage there that works really well. So I think you could do something like that would lend to it without being overly like an obvious handshake, right? But something that showed some intertwining between two sides of the logo, right? And not that this is a logo exercise, but anyways. But what I would say is, if you're going to create a brand, I always suggest creating the primary logo, a secondary logo, and then some sort of iconography or element that can stand on its own, that you can use in other places as badges, as signatory things, like just individual one-offs.
And to Steve's first point of that, like, there's no right or wrong answer here. And the cool part is, like, it's your company. You can do or not do whatever, right? So you could have an icon, you could not have an icon. Again, it's a strong word, and I think the word PACT makes a lot of sense. So like, that's why I was always interested where it came from, because I was like, oh, that makes so much sense for what it is. I love it. I love the name. And I think it can be a really, really strong, powerful brand. So glad it only took a week, because sometimes it takes a lot longer than that.
There was a moment of panic with OneNote, because I was married to that name mentally for a week, and then it was like, well, zero. Go back to where you started from. So we're very, very happy with PACT. And Steve and I were talking about this. Sometimes when it comes to like, to be transparent about the logo and the branding were a change order at the very end of our original dev agency engagement. So obviously it was closer to the bottom of the priority list. And if you're really like looking at the site and the investment, more was invested in the functionality, UI, UX, and core features. And then you get to the very end and you go, whoa, I need a top left logo. I need one. Like, what are we going to put up there? And so that got squeezed in at the end. Recommendation to Future Mark or any future founder is to either just do that because you'll change your logo anyway, or B, maybe just like consider the entire engagement before you get to the last 3 weeks. Your project manager is telling you that you're burning design hours at this rate. You need a top left logo. You pump in a change request. You get taxed a little bit more cash, and then you get to a logo that you're going to change anyway. So, these are the things that I've learned by doing this once and would perhaps do differently in the future. I think logo is a good exercise because, like, if you nail name and logo, it's almost like creating a mission and vision. And I did kick off all of our dev conversations with our mission and vision, and that really helped kind of guide the function and the features and some of like even like the page styling. But if you get to a logo and a name first, like that's just an extension of your mission and vision. That can definitely help page styling, UI, all that kind of stuff. We kind of did it backwards. We got like fonts, colors, all these things. And then we're like, oh, make a logo out of this. Whereas we had started at the beginning with, font, logo type, colors, brand. It could have helped all the subsequent pages that we developed. Now,
yeah. I mean, you've kind of nailed how the process should go. I mean, we're in the middle of two, brand exercises right now, logo designs, websites, and it is very much yes. Hey, if we can create this vision, and we'll be able to utilize what that mission is, what they actually want, what they like, and that logo, the icons, the verbiage, anything throughout the entire process. I don't want to say it streamlines it, but there's definitely a better way to like build things out. It helps the overall build out for sure.
Yep.
I'll say this. If I had to choose between solid branding and crap tech, or solid tech with crap branding, I would choose the latter.
Yeah.
Every single time. Only because the tech is hard to change.
Yeah.
Right. And if once you have foundational tech that's solid and works, and you don't have to continue the, band-aiding and patch it, like foundationally, that's great. The design, as you see, like brands rebrand all the time. Right. So like even especially as a startup, because no one essentially knows you yet. Right. Like if you start getting super popular, then at some point it's going to be a good problem to have, because someone's going to go to you and be like, hey, you're making millions of dollars. Maybe we should invest some dollars here to, update the brand a little bit. But still, foundationally, the brand is fine for what this thing does, right? I think the name, I can't get over the fact that it's solid. Like it's a solid foundation for a name.
Yeah, I agree. So here's another question, right? Obviously, you said a little bit of that inspiration or thought originated from my mom, right? Just kind of like watching her process of paper, pen, horrible, process of how she does it. As far as like supporters, mentors, people that you're talking with on a more regular basis, one, do you have those kind of people that you're working with, that you have in your life that you can lean on for support and guidance? And if you do, how important has that been for you in the stage that you're currently in?
I do have a co-founder, which I found amazing. And I don't think that I don't think that any company should be like a single person. Um, so my co-founder and I met through our kids. We, to this point, uh, both of our kids are 2. We share a nanny with them. Our kids hang out every day. I see them every day. Um, I did start the process as a single founder and then added him while we were developing the site. And it's very, very useful to have a second person for both manpower, diversify the skill set a little bit. They bring something to the table. And really, there were times when I was not able to work as much on this and he was working more, vice versa, the whole bit. So I couldn't recommend having a co-founder enough. I've colloquially found that VCs are not all that thrilled to talk to people that are single founders because they don't see them being able to support or give enough oxygen to a business as a single person. And if you're unable, some businesses are ideated by 2 people equally, but if you're like me, you think of an idea and you're unable to sell one person on it to be a co-founder, how are you going to sell customers on it? So it does show that at the very least, I have sold one person enough to join the team, and they are excited about it. So he is a tremendous resource. And then I do have, I would say, like a handful of local other either ex-founders or maybe they were like very early founding team. I've found them through family friends. I've found them literally at the coffee shop that I go to every Saturday morning. One is a very good friend now, and they have imparted plenty of advice. I think like one nugget of advice that I've gotten so far, and it's pretty tied into like either an email campaign or picking a dev agency or a logo or like whatever it is. He started and then exited a company pretty recently, also in payments. And he was like, right now, everything that you do at this company is just an experiment. So think of it more like, how am I measuring? How do I record my results? How do I look back on it in 2 years? Don't really be married to anything because you can change it whenever you want. And that kind of gets back to both like how we got to this logo. Sometimes when people ask me, they're like, "Oh, amazing! Like you started your own business. Like how's that going?" I want to tell them like, you can call it a business, but like this is an experiment. Like we have a tax ID, but right now we're just like experimenting if this is like a worthwhile pursuit. But that is, I think, it does guide my thinking a lot for whether it's this upcoming email campaign. I want to do a direct mail campaign. I've had people go, mail, like you want to send people letters in the mail? And I'm like, well, I have a good experiment. I have a hypothesis. I want to test it. I have measurables. I can record the results. 100% might fail. I have no idea. Most of my activities now, outside of getting an official mortgage servicing license, which is very much not an experiment, uh, the rest of the business is very like experimental. So I've just kind of pursued things like that. Don't get too married or attached to things. And, you know, I agree. I agree with my mentor friend who said, hey, just try it out, record the results and go see.
It's such honestly, it's such good advice. Um, typically when people ask us, just like any kind of marketing, I always say like, I don't know if it's going to work. I'm going to take data that we either research or the client can provide us, and we're going to take our creative minds and our gut, and we're going to put something out there and see what happens. And then we'll iterate on it and optimize and iterate and iterate and iterate until something lands. And it's similar. I think it's a similar mindset to, marketing is experiment. Like, we don't know what's going to work. There's no guarantee. We can think about consumer behavior and see trends and try to manipulate those trends with specific kinds of campaigns and tactics. But at the end of the day, like, the market's going to dictate what works or doesn't work. And then we need to, change direction or go all in because it's working. So it's really good advice, I would say.
It's also refreshing that from a founder perspective, from a business owner's perspective, you're not beholden to one tactic, right? Like, sometimes we come across people who are like, I only do email because I know that's what works. And a thought experiment comes to mind is when Red Bull was first, being established, which again, massive brand. Like, the way they did some guerrilla marketing is they just left a bunch of their cans in near trash cans, near bars, near a university. And when people saw that, they're like, wow, what are these empty cans that we just see absolutely everywhere? I got to try that. And it's different, right? Like, you have to be willing to try something completely different to, separate yourself from all the stack that's out there, and you don't know. And when Max says that we don't know the solutions to things, let me rephrase that. We have experience in the space and we know what can work. Do we know it's going to work for you specifically? Not necessarily, but there definitely is experience behind that. But again, knowing that you're going into this fresh and you're like, hey, I'm willing to try stuff. That's awesome, right? It doesn't pigeonhole you to one solution that might work.
People want to know the results before they fork over the dollars, and that's just not always how it works out. And particularly when you're starting like a brand new company, like, a lot of his advice has been like, man, when I started my company, the product in the market that we thought we were going to satisfy had nothing to do with what we ended up selling the business for. And the product changed 5 times. Like, we talked about a logo changing, but like, products evolved and markets that product satisfies evolves. So the goal right now for me is to find relatively like low investment or at least manageable investment volume experiments that can run. I don't really need like massive scale, but I can't run an experiment that takes me 8 months. I can run a very small scale experiment if it takes 1 month and it takes, relatively manageable investment. So for me, my goal right now is to pursue kind of like a lot of channels, whether it's email, direct mail. I don't really have any basis of eliminating a channel right now. I'll call you up if I have to. As long as I'll eliminate a channel if it takes 8 months to put together any type of campaign for that. Or if it takes investment that I need to steer elsewhere. Right. But whether it's direct mail or email or SMS or leaving flyers at open houses or whatever it might be, like, I'm not really eliminating any channel, nor am I committing to any channel, because the experiments will run and then we'll figure it out.
Love it. Awesome. So, Mark, we usually end these things with one big question, and it's kind of an ethereal question for a lot of people. So, given where you are today, like you're not a 50-year-old founder, you're a fairly young man with a young kid. We always like to ask the question of, does today's Mark? Well, if you look back, 12-year-old Mark, do you think 12-year-old Mark would be doing what today's Mark is doing? Do you think like your path from as a child to now, do you think you would have gotten to where you are now? Or did you think you were going to be something completely different?
I mean, he thought he was going to be a baseball player. Let's be serious.
Yeah, I think we all did.
12-year-old Mark was pretty good. Maybe not 12-year-old Mark, but college Mark wanted to be a big brand marketer at probably Nike or some type of footwear. Post-college, Mark figured out pretty quickly that he wanted to start his own company. I went to work for a startup outside of college, outside of just in Silicon Valley, outside of SF. And at that time, like, man, like if you were in Silicon Valley, it was impossible not to be excited about starting a business. And everybody seemed to like have the same bit by the same bug. That kind of tailed off a little bit over the last 8 years because not every business is Uber, NVIDIA,
right,
Meta. But yeah, I think if I look back at my life, general leadership, independence of work, real estate. I actually come from a real estate family background. Most of my father's family, including him, including my grandfather, his brothers, his sisters, all work in real estate. So yes, I think that like the seeds were all there where it was, how is, Mark gonna find his way somehow into real estate? He had to go work at like a payments company, and now he's back and working in what is real estate, payments and servicing and these types of things. So yes, it was always there, and maybe there were some scenic routes, but I do think that 12, 18, 24-year-old Mark would be like, oh, okay, checks out that at 32 you're doing this thing.
It's awesome.
Awesome, man.
Well, we're super excited for you. I'm excited to watch and continue to watch the growth of the brand, of you, and obviously, whatever you need, I'm here. We're here to support when we can. How can people find you? Where should they be looking? This is like your chance to plug your socials or where you're going to be, telling the world what this is.
Getpact.us. That's our website. And then if you are a LinkedIn person, we will be posting more content to PACT's LinkedIn page. It is PACT. So getpact.us is our site. We'll start to slowly build out some channels, but LinkedIn is where you want to go. Directly to the site is where you want to go. And that's where you will find us.
Amazing. Well, Mark, really appreciate your time. Loved hearing more of the backstory here. And until next time, thanks everyone for listening, and we will talk to you all soon.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks so much for listening. Feel free to reach out to us for all things marketing at attentiontrading.com.